We are going to be calling into them. Do know that we do have some people parked at the zoo, okay? Okay? And also do know that if you do get off at a stop, that there is no bus coming behind us. This is the last tour of the day. So I do keep that in mind as well as you're going along the tour. Now to the right, you may have seen that sculpture at stop number 1 called the Gifts of the Wind. Now that is a great example of our Philadelphia Arts Ordinance Program, which says if you do construct today in the city, 1% of your construction costs must go towards public arts. Another reason why we have so many sculptures is because of that one important law. Of course, another reason why we have so many sculptures. And coming up on the left is going to be the Free Quaker Meeting House. Founded back in 1783, it closed in 1834. It was founded by 200 installed Quakers from the Quaker community. There it is on the left. Now, when it did close back in 1834, among the last 2 members to close its doors included John Price Weatherhill and Betsy Ross. Arch Street was originally called Mulberry Street. We did rename it Arch Street for an arch that stood right to our left. Major look. There's no arch there. We knocked it down to make room for our I-95 interstate, our major highway. We're also pulling into stop 2, the Betsy Ross House. Is anyone for stop 2 today? Betsy Ross. No one up top, Angela, for stop 2. Anyone down below? No one down below for Betsy Ross. Betsy Ross was born back in 1752 over in New Jersey. She was given credit for sewing our nation's first flag. Throughout the years, Betsy Ross had 3 husbands and 7 children, getting her nickname Salty Rossi. Their first husband's name was John Ross, who was an Episcopalian. Betsy Ross herself, being a Quaker, to leave her Quaker faith to marry her first husband, John Ross. However, John Ross unexpectedly did die during the war. They say that he got smoked. He was lighting a cigarette sitting next to ammunition. Although, no really direct receipt that ever happened either. She would go on to marry her second husband, Joseph Ashburn, who too did die during the war. He was captured and held as a prisoner of war over in Britain, and did die at that prison. Now, the inmate that wrote to Betsy Ross of her second husband's death turned out to be her third husband, John Claypool. I just stop and think maybe that third husband had something to do with that second husband's death. My favorite thing about the museum is you go inside and you can actually meet an impersonator who claims that she is Betsy Ross herself. Now, I'd like to say that a Betsy Ross impersonator inside is married to the Benjamin Franklin impersonator here in town. Can anyone guess where they had their wedding ceremony? Independence Hall! Oh my goodness, everyone okay? Whoa! Oh my goodness, that branch came out of nowhere. I'm so sorry. Is everyone okay up top? Everyone okay up top? Hold on 1 second. Antoine, if you just pull over 1 second. To this grave today, Benjamin Franklin did come up with that saying, a penny saved is a penny earned. And altogether, this burial ground raises over $3,000 a year from pennies alone that people throw on top of his grave. That's a lot of money back then. Now, back in 1790, when Benjamin Franklin died, more than 20,000 people came here to the burial ground to pay their final respects to the founding father. We're also pulling into stop 3 for the National Constitution Center. Is anyone for stop 3 today? Nope, I don't have anyone for this museum. Now, inside of the museum to our right, you can learn all about the Constitution. Although the actual document is not located there, it's located over in the National Archives in Washington, D.C. They do have lots of hands-on exhibits for you to enjoy. One of my favorites is an exhibit where you can learn about how to vote, and through the process, vote for your favorite signer of the Constitution. Coming up to the right is the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia, one of 12 reserve banks in the United States that do offer a money in motion store, where you can see a rare $100,000 bill, money from the Colonial Times. Just for attending that tour, every single person you go through is handed $100. You guys believe it?
Read it out.
I hope not. It's shredded money that you go up to $100. Although I do like to think that you can piece it back together somehow. Coming up to the right is going to be the African American Museum of Philly. Came our tour city back in once called the John Wanamaker Department Store, one of our nation's first department stores ever built. Inside the lobby, you can find the world's largest pipe organ, which plays 3 times a day. And we do have John Wanamaker to thank for the phrases, the customer is always right, the money back guarantee, and the receipt of purchase. All ideas were come up by good old John. Now, on the 3rd floor of the Macy's building, you can find the Crystal Tea Room, an elegant ballroom, where I had my senior prom. Lots of great food and stuff for you to enjoy inside that ballroom. I definitely would recommend it to you. And as we are getting closer to City Hall, you may look straight up in the sky and see the statue of William Penn, which is the largest bronze you put on top of any building in the world. One strand of William Penn's hair is about 5 feet tall. It's about as tall as me, very, very short. That first sculpture is at that time, exactly. Now we do have the world record for the world's largest masonry building ever built, which means that this has no steel frame. This is built brick on top of brick on top of brick. It should have had is our Masonic temple. Architect of this building was John H. Windrum. Inside you can see over 7 different rooms of architecture. Benjamin Franklin and George Washington both were considered to be Masons. Different regional rail lines are run to any one of our suburban counties, such as Montgomery County, Lancaster County, Delaware County, and Wilmington, Delaware. Train even goes there. We're turning on to the Benjamin Franklin Parkway now. To the right is the famous sculpture called The Prophet by Jacob Lipkin. Here he is on the right. And a sculpture on the right called The Relay Piece by Henry Moore. The term represents a pebble being thrown across the water. And to the right is the sculpture called Three Discs, One Lacking by Alexander Carter. And the Carters did contribute many pieces of art to the city, including the William Penn statue back to our City Hall, as well as the sculptures coming up very soon in the middle of our fountain, also called the Swan Memorial Fountain. Now you may look straight up here to the sky, here to the right, protruding from the backs of those buildings, the top of our basilica. This is called the Basilica of St. Peter Paul. Blessed Basilica, back in 1976 by Pope John Paul II, is modeled after the St. Lombard Church in Rome. Now you're going to see something rather strange about this church. There are no stained glass windows on the first floor. Why is this? Well, because of those anti-Catholic riot groups called the Know-Nothings. This church thought if they have no stained glass windows on the first floor, that their church would not burn down. Of course, they did have the right idea. It's still with us today. Now, there are pews inside of this church that are made of marble that seat over 900 people. Back in 1976, so many people wanted to come and see the Pope. However, we did have Lieutenant Malcolm City. Silver City actually built a huge stage right over the top of the stage ahead and closed down the whole parkway. We did were able to achieve all of those amounts of people. Right behind us to the right is the Copernic statue by Dudley Talcott, dedicated to the astronomer Copernicus, who disagreed with the Catholic Church that the Earth was not the center of the universe. He argued that it was just like every other planet and revolved around the sun. Now Copernicus, who was excommunicated from the church for his beliefs, but would you place his memorial statue right next to the church? It was put together by Philly Cray, who also helped design our Benjamin Franklin Bridge. Right beside the Barnes Foundation sits our stop number 8, the Rodin Museum. Is anyone first stop 8 today in Rodin? No stop? If you're down below, please holler so Antoine can hear you. Now this is where you see the great amount of artwork done by Claude Rodin outside of Paris, France. He was famous for incorporating feelings and expressions into his sculpture, which has a thing right called The Thinker, which is not the original, but it is the third cast ever done. The museum did open back on July 13th. Now right behind the museum, right in between the two pillars, is a huge stone gate. So I'd like to point that out to you because it's a very popular place for newlyweds to get their pictures taken after they say their I do's. However, I'm not sure these newlyweds know this, but that huge gate is called the Gates of Hell. So all these newlyweds are getting their pictures taken from a gate that depicts Dante's Inferno, said to be the last piece of art ever worked on by Rodin before his death. Now at the very end of the street, we're going to be coming up to our Eastern State Penitentiary, opened back in 1829 and closed in 1971. It was a belief that we take the worst of criminals and put them in self-seclusion with the Bible, that this would make them more penitent. That's why we call this place a penitentiary. And the first inmate that would be sentenced here was Charles Williams, sentenced to 2 years for stealing a horse. Now, up until 1829, our City of Philadelphia was using our Walnut Street prison, and living conditions there were so bad that was the right way to treat the work of criminals. Although, when it did close back in 1971, there were over 900 inmates in the prison. Those inmates were said to have gone free and see how far back this prison actually goes. It's rather creepy, if you ask me. Now, did anyone ever escape the prison? Yes, they did. Willie Slick Sutton and 12 other inmates were successful in digging an underground tunnel right below the prison, which they escaped. However, do not get too excited. Willie Slick Sutton was picked up at a neighborhood bar about 12 hours later. There it is to the right, the Eastern State Penitentiary. My favorite inmates who ever spent time at the prison had to have been Seth, the Labrador Retriever. He was sentenced to life in prison at the penitentiary for killing the mayor wife's cat. Meow, poor kitty, right? Or we're rather say poor puppy. He lived out his life sentence there at the penitentiary. So they were run up by his stunt double. Here we are, stop 13.
Get a movie of Senegal Fly.